Good evening, everybody, and welcome. The deranged Marxists who have taken over America's once renowned justice system have turned it into a weapon of mass injustice. In the kangaroo court in the failed state of New York, partisan hatchet man, DA, that's right, Soros sponsored Alvin Bragg, has issued a motion to hold Trump in contempt of court because the DA says he violated the gag order put in place to keep the leading presidential contender from speaking out about this sham trial in the midst of the 2024 presidential campaign. It is absolutely obscene what the most corrupt judiciary in the country, in the state of New York, is, well, the most corrupt outside of D.C., to see what they're doing. This happened during jury selection yesterday when, no surprise, more than half of the jury pool, 96 people, they were found to be too biased to be on the jury. That was more than 50 of those 96 candidates. Talk about a toxic, tainted jury poll. That's what New York is delivering on the island of Manhattan. And now, Judge Merchant, a Marxist Democrat operative and activist who donated to Biden's election against Donald Trump in 2020, whose daughter has shilled for powerful Democrats like Kamala Harris and Joe Biden himself, raising $93 million, by the way. Well, she's threatening to jail Donald Trump if he violates his gag order again or misses a single day of his ridiculous trial. This Judge Merchant is a beauty. Now, let's not forget that the Department of Injustice refused to bring charges against this illegitimate legal case to begin with. Cyrus Vance, the previous Manhattan DA, wouldn't bring the case. Alvin Bragg himself wouldn't initially bring it, but somehow was convinced that it would be in the interest of the Democrat Party to do so. One of the many serial liars and political prostitutes at the center of this legal case is none other than Michael Cohen, admitted in an FEC filing in 2018 that the funds came from Cohen and had nothing to do with Trump or his campaign or anyone else. And the literal prostitute, an adult film actress, Stormy Daniels, aka Stephanie Clifford, put it in writing that she never had an affair with Trump and said no hush money was given to her to claim otherwise. That's the evidence before the court. And that's before she went running to the hate Trump media with a new version of events. I'm not sure what the legal standing in is of her NDA and her sworn statement. But anyway, she went to 60 Minutes, and they're never too careful, and peddled a new version of events. This time, she was threatened by an imaginary Trump goon to recant her story. Now, which of those stories is the most likely? And Cohen's attorney instantly fired back that Stormy was a fraud. Talk about a pit of vipers. This is a nest of them. And all playing out in a Manhattan courtroom led by an extraordinary Marxist Dem judge. Legal scholar Jonathan Turley summed it up best by calling this entire New York so-called hush money sideshow simply absurd. Here he is.
It's creating a criminal code just for Trump. You have a misdemeanor whose time has expired. The statute of limitations ran out, and it was revived in this rather curious way. He's effectively arguing that Trump was filing false business records through his counsel to hide a federal crime. But it isn't a federal crime. This wasn't a campaign contribution. None of that appears to matter. And that's why a lot of us are looking at this and recoiling. This is not how the law is supposed to be.
Not how it's supposed to be, but it is in New York. You don't have to have any evidence. You don't have to have a crime. You don't have to have much other than a crooked judge, a crooked prosecutor, and oh yes, a few crooked appellate courts. The whole judiciary in the state of New York is a disaster, only outdone by the DC federal courts. The constitutional law professor, Jonathan Turley, then expanded on the threat to all Americans being posed by this weaponization of the justice system by the Marxist Dems.
If you recall, Mark Elias, who was the general counsel of the Clinton campaign, was just fined. The campaign was fined by the FEC for hiding the payments, the support for the Steele dossier as a legal expense. And they were fined for that. No one was criminally charged. In this case, you're taking this misdemeanor, reviving it because it was dead, suggesting a crime that doesn't exist, and then hitting Trump with dozens of counts. Most citizens, at least outside New York, see that for what it is. It's the weaponization of the criminal justice system.
And weaponizing it through and through is the Marxist Dem Party, led by this puppet President Joe Biden and Merrick Garland over at the Department of Justice. Meanwhile, these Marxist Dem extremists are rampaging all across the country. And where are the hacks in the Department of Homeland Security to sound the alarms as we watch these kinds of demonstrations by pro-Hamas protesters all across the country? Pro-Hamas protests have erupted, and in bigger numbers, it seems, every week. In New York City Monday, these ungrateful ingrates burned American flags, desecrated our country at a protest outside Brooklyn Borough Hall. The contemptible cretins of the pro-Palestinian movement then storming the Brooklyn Bridge, shouting, "Oh, that's right, free Palestine." Hey, talk to Hamas if you want to free Palestine. It's called Free Hamas. Be honest. Be straight up about it. They don't even care if we have a free America, so why should we listen to these Marxist degenerates? Ship them back to the Middle Eastern hellholes from which they sprang, as far as I'm concerned. They would be happy. We would be better off without their bigotry. Laura Loomer reported that many so-called protesters got into physical altercations with the New York Police Department and were arrested. So they're criminals on top of everything else. But you won't hear a peep out of the Biden administration nor the national left-wing media. Joe Biden could never confront his radical Marxist, Israel-hating base. His catastrophic presidency is on, it's in the latter innings, if you will, and he needs every legal and illegal vote he can get to come within at least hailing distance of President Donald Trump on November 5th. Even if it's the vote of America-hating radicals who blocked major transportation hubs and streets, including, by the way, Chicago O'Hare Airport or the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco or the collapsed drug-infested illegal alien overrun city of Oakland. They all get a free pass to wreak havoc on cities across the country because Joe Biden, he won an election, didn't he? No, he didn't win an election. He stole an election. And the Marxist Dems, well, they put him up on the top of the ticket, and they knew he was simply a puppet. They knew he was cognitively impaired and politically compromised as well. Next time you see these free Palestine freaks, realize these are the goons that Joe Biden really represents. He couldn't give a darn about the tens of millions of Americans struggling to pay their bills or send their kids to colleges or even raise them in a safe and orderly neighborhood. Well, in Florida, there is some semblance of sanity, I'm pleased to report. This is what Governor DeSantis' state did to these free Palestine Philistines who tried to block traffic. That's exactly the level of respect that these degenerates deserve. Joining us now to talk about the rise of these pro-Hamas protests throughout the country is Revolver News editor Darren Beattie. Darren, great to have you here. As you watch this, I mean, this is sickening to watch. I mean, these are parades of bigotry all across the country, anti-Semitism.
Indeed, it's very troubling. And we have a new piece out at revolver.news that sort of chronicles some of the egregious and really outrageous behavior, in particular on U.S. campuses. And as your audience might know, there has been a backlash against this to some degree We've had people pressure universities to address the issue. And I think while that is very welcome, we need to be careful in how we do that. In particular, I've noticed some spokespeople emerge kind of out of the blue. People like Talia Khan and others who are basically calling to address this issue by adding additional types of speech codes. So, additional speech restrictions that would clamp down on offensive speech by these pro Palestine, pro Hamas radicals. I think that's ill advised. I think the best approach would observe the following distinction: the distinction between violent threats and disruptive behavior, for which there should be a zero tolerance policy on universities. That is to say, if any of these activists disrupt somebody else's speech or threaten somebody physically, that's ground for immediate expulsion. On the
Yeah.
other hand, I think any First Amendment protected speech should be accommodated, and these calls to add speech codes, I think, are actually bound to backfire because the university administrators who would be implementing it will simply use those to further legitimize and entrench the pre-existing speech codes that have been used to stifle conservatives and conservative speakers.
Darren, I'm one of those folks. I've made my living covering news and events over the course of the years, and offering up my opinion on most of it in recent decades. Uh, I, I'm I don't want to ever hear that somebody has a new way to define what is within the boundaries of free speech. Everyone, in my opinion, with the First Amendment right, that is, every American citizen, should be able to speak his or her mind as they wish. And we have laws already on the books about how far you can go in terms of bumping into somebody or in any way threatening to harm them. To me, it's ludicrous. If anybody wants to see how ludicrous it is when you start defining the boundaries of free speech, look to Canada and Trudeau and his Marxist
Indeed.
merry-go-round up there. Turn to the United Kingdom. Turn to Europe. And you will see what suffocation is when applied to First Amendment rights. They don't have them. And that's right. The home of the Magna Carta, there's no free speech. And there is in this country, and it is one of our great treasures. And I couldn't agree with you, Darren, more that
And Lou,
to leave it the hell alone.
Lou, I would only add that this is particularly so on university campuses, which, if
Mhm.
anywhere, is supposed to foster open discourse, safe discourse, uninterrupted discourse. Everyone should have the right to hear people, even controversial speakers, and that applies across the board. And I think what's especially misguided about some of this push for censorship coming from the right or the ostensible right is that censorship is part of the left wing DNA because ultimately,
Mhm.
on a level discursive playing field, we win because our ideas have a closer relationship to the truth, and people, when
Mhm.
hearing them, find them inherently compelling. That's why the other side is so invested in censorship. So for us to play the censorship game is just it's not
It's ignorant.
congruent with what our
Yeah.
comparative advantage actually is. On the other hand, as I mentioned, disruptive behavior is very much
Yeah.
in the DNA of all left wing activist
And
mobilization movements,
you're
including and
exactly right.
especially the Palestinian ones. That's why there should be a zero tolerance policy for that. So it's a very important and frankly easy distinction that I think we should all observe when approaching and applying pressure to these universities and other venues.
Yeah, and particularly looking at Harvard, and I will confess it is my alma mater. I have to say to see how they have handled the calls for genocide, the threats against Jewish students at Harvard on the campus, the way in which they refuse to acknowledge that the Hamas was calling for genocide, and those students who are wanting to quote unquote free Palestine from the river, of course, to the sea. Uh, that they were somehow rational, protect their rights, but don't threaten those students. And we have a president of Harvard who was a plagiarist, who was anti-Semitic, and who's now making $900,000 a year teaching students about the ethics of research and writing. It's only Harvard could, pretzel itself up to that degree. We thank you, Darren, and we recommend everybody go to Revolver for the latest that they have on what has become a scourge on American college and university campuses. Darren, thank you so much.
Thank you, Lou.
Coming up, we speak to an Iranian-American human rights activist who was born under Islam and after 15 years of imprisonment, torture, and oppression, escaped. Annie Cyrus joins us next. We'll be talking about her story and her view of what is transpiring now in Iran and parts of the Middle East. Straight ahead. Stay with us. Welcome back. House Speaker Mike Johnson unveiled a proposal to send wartime aid to Israel and Ukraine, as well as Taiwan, in separate standalone bills. Johnson outlined the plan to reporters.
There are precipitating events around the globe that we're all watching very carefully, and we know that the world is watching us to see how we react. We have terrorists and tyrants and terrible leaders around the world like Putin and Xi and in Iran, and they're watching to see if America will stand up for its allies and in our own interest around the globe, and we will. What we'll do is bring to the House floor independent measures. We won't be voting on the Senate supplemental in its current form, but we will vote on each of these measures separately in 4 different pieces. We will vote on the Israel aid, on the aid to Ukraine, on the aid to the Indo-Pacific, and then another measure that has our national security priorities included, and that has some of the things with regard to the loan lease option and the Repo Act and some other sanctions on Iran and other measures that we've been talking about here for quite some time.
Can you believe anyone would be talking in that hushed, condescending voice to the national media? Well, it's probably better than he treats the conference, the Republican conference, so there is that. By passing these as standalone bills, Johnson gives away all leverage that Republicans have. The House is the only Republican-controlled body in the entire federal government. And instead of demanding border security and other America First priorities in exchange for the aid as promised, Johnson immediately caves to the puppet president. What a shameful disappointment he is. And today, Congressman Thomas Massie announced he will join Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene in co-sponsoring the motion to vacate Speaker Johnson. His days appear certainly numbered. Over in the Senate, Democrats quashed the Republican effort to force an immediate vote on a $14 billion aid package to Israel, which was passed in the House. That bill includes funds to replenish Israel's missile defense systems, and they were able to intercept 99% of Iran's drone attacks over the weekend. But Joe Biden apparently not interested in helping Israel without helping Ukraine. The White House has made it clear that puppet Joe Biden, as cognitively impaired and politically compromised as he is, will not support an aid package only for Israel. So not only are the Marxist Dems failing to provide Israel with aid, Joe Biden is also cautioning Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on taking further military action. Meanwhile, we're learning that Biden coordinated with the Iranians to launch this attack. According to a report in the Jerusalem Post, the Biden administration told officials in Tehran, and by the way, in other reports using Turkey as a middleman, that any action it took had to be within certain limits, end quote. In other words, the Biden administration directed the Iranians on what was an appropriate level of attack. Like his Marxist predecessor, Barack Obama, Joe Biden is siding with the radical terrorist regime over Israel, our ally. And joining us now to talk about all of this and more, Iranian American human rights activist Annie Cyrus. She was born under Islam, and after 15 years of imprisonment and torture and depression, she escaped. And we thank her for doing so. And she joins us tonight. Annie, great to see you. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, Lou. It's a pleasure to be here.
Over 300 missiles, guided missiles, and ballistic and rockets fired into Israel, 99% intercepted. And this president, Joe Biden, wants Benjamin Netanyahu to simply sit on his, not respond to that extraordinary attack. Your thoughts?
Well, let me start from here. Joe Biden has, from day one of taking office, Joe Biden has sided with Islamists. From day one, he sided with Islamists. So there is no surprise that he's also siding with IRGC or Islamic Republic of Iran today. By words, he has always been supporting Israel. By action, he has always made sure to fund. We start from Taliban, the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, where we left billions of dollars in military equipment and technology for Taliban. Where it all ended up in hands of Islamic Republic of Iran's regime because they purchased those from Taliban. From that day to this day, there is no denying that Biden is on side of Islam. And my personal opinion is it's because Islam is what can help Biden destroy America. I think this was a pre-planned, as you mentioned, pre-planned coordination between Biden regime and the mullahs to bait Israel into a military response. Because Iran has said they're done. As of today, they're done. But if Israel does retaliate, and if America back Israel in any shape or form, the next attack will be here in the United States of America. They have plenty sleeper cells here to just make a call, and we might witness even a bigger attack like September 11 taking place here in America. It is election year, a chaos, internal war, Middle Eastern war. It could all help Biden possibly take power, hold on to the power, and finish the mission, destroy America.
Yeah. I wonder at this point if there is any way in the world the president of this country right now, an illegitimate president in my judgment, but he passes for a commander in chief, but so does Lloyd Austin. Pose as a Secretary of Defense. So we can get pretty far down the chain of command in the military before we find real warriors. I'm just curious right now as to what we are doing to make certain that this country is secure, because there's no obvious sign. The border is wide open. We are bringing nationals from every quarter of the earth, it seems, whether they come from destabilized regions like the Middle East, Africa, South America, parts of Asia. I mean, we're bringing them all in because this president has incentivized them to come here, and they're working with the Mexican drug cartels. We have a disastrous national security profile at this very moment, don't we?
We absolutely do. And it is absolutely a disaster, but then it gets more dangerous because the concentration and focus of this regime is towards those who care for America, those who love America. Let's look at it. Grandma, J6, praying, simply targeted, possibly facing prison time. Pro-Palestinian protesters in Michigan chanting death to America, not a single visit from FBI or even local police department. It's not only they're handing our country into possibly sex traffickers, cartel, Islamist jihadists, but also actively all of these alphabet soup corrupt departments are taking us out one by one. They're targeting anyone who's willing to stand up, tell the truth, and fight for America. And unfortunately, Lou, as you know, we're not many. After January 6th, they made sure to make an example out of them to where people are afraid. I have a job I need to protect. I have children. I can't go to prison. I need to be in good terms with my wife. All of those little fear methods are to where we're keeping more and more quiet, and they're gaining more momentum. So it's pretty, I wouldn't say it's scary, because I prefer not to use the word scared, but it is a concerning time. And if our fellow Americans don't do the right thing and make sure we have President Trump back in office, we will not survive another 4 years of this. We won't.
Yeah. To your point about fear, I truly believe that no one should ever live in fear, and always should praise the Lord. And America needs to remember those words. It's truly a time for confidence in our country, and understand that we've been through tough times before. Never tough times quite to this extent, at least domestically, in terms of national security threats. This is unprecedented. I want to ask you, as we close up here, give me a sense of how long you think it will take for Iran to develop a nuclear weapon, according to your sources, and how many more of these guided missiles and ballistic missiles does Iran have at its disposal? And I'm not talking about the proxies. We know Hezbollah has thousands of anti-tank missiles. I'm talking about Iran in its own arsenal.
Absolutely. So as far as the nuclear weapon, talking about one, I strongly believe they already have that. And I want to just say this, not undermining the danger Israel and Israeli people are facing, but the one nuclear weapon they have ready, it's not for Israel. It has been built and established for New York, aka America, as they call America, New York. They are in process of developing more. And this is literally mentioned by their own people watching their own news. They have also sent a new batch of drones to Lebanon for Hezbollah, and they are in process of sending another shipment to Hamas in Gaza border. As far as their own, between giving so much to Russia and Lebanon and Hamas, I would say they probably have another 2 or 3 rounds of attacking Israel like they did on Saturday. Again, these are information they have put out themselves. However, I don't think they're going to make a move until Netanyahu and Israeli government make a decision on how to respond to what they've done. And I personally have seen hundreds, if not thousands, of Iranian people on social media asking for Netanyahu to come in and rescue them. People of Iran are ready for a war that would possibly set them free. At this point, they're at a point of give me freedom or give me death.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Annie. We appreciate it so much. Annie Cyrus, I look forward to our next conversation, and let's hope that it's a more positive turn to it all. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lou.
Thank you. Turning now to the corrupt Washington, D.C. Circuit Court. All of the courts in D.C. are corrupt. A judge rejected Rudy Giuliani's request to overturn a $146 million defamation judgment brought by 2 Georgia election workers. How did they get to $146 million? You tell me. The election workers absurdly claimed that by trying to protect the integrity of our elections, Giuliani defamed them to the tune of a sum that most people wouldn't earn in 5 lifetimes, or, well, I don't even know what the number would be. The entire case, like nearly all that are being brought in lawfare by the Marxist Dems, is absolutely outrageous. Meanwhile, Trump Media is beginning to roll out a streaming platform. The company says the rollout will be done in phases. The first phase for Android, the second, Apple phones, then the World Wide Web. And the final phase would be for smart TVs. The company also saying it could be selling millions of shares in the coming months. And before we go, MyPillow is excited to announce that they're having a huge spring sale. And here are a few examples. Buy one MyPillow 2.0 and get another one absolutely free. Now, these pillows are made with cooling technology, which means the best pillow just got even better. Now, my wife and I have one each, and I can tell you we're delighted with them. And this just in, 9 brand new colors and styles of their percale bed sheets. They're made with the finest long staple cotton, and now you can save 50% or even more. That's as low as $24.98 a set. And for the first time this year, my slippers and sandals for as low as $25 a pair. And by the way, my wife and I love our all of our products from MyPillow. And I have to say to you, the dogs, we keep 3 dogs here on the farm, and I'll tell you what, they all 3 love the MyPillow dog beds. I didn't know whether to bring it up today or not, but I got to tell you, everything MyPillow we're recommending, but I have to tell you, each one of these products is amazing. Even our dogs are enthusiasts for MyPillow, and I'm sure your dogs will be too. Go to promo code Dobbs or call 800-977-9152. That's 800-977-9152. Promo code Dobbs to get the MyPillow 2.0. Buy one, get one free, or the percale sheets for as low as $24.98. My slippers and sandals for as low as $25 a pair. Again, the slippers are amazing. My wife and I love them. We love the MyPillow pillows. And for a limited time, when you order $75 or more, your entire order ships absolutely free. And that is a considerable savings, by the way. So go to mypillow.com and use promo code, now this is the important part, Dobbs, D-O-B-B-S. Thanks so much. Coming up, Planned Parenthood refusing a court order to turn over documents that would reveal its role in subjecting children to heinous transgender experiments. More on that coming up here next. And join us on my podcast, The Great America Show, available at LouDobbs.com, wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. The Marxist Democrat Party has an obsession with mutilating children. They call it gender-affirming care, but it is anything but. The Supreme Court issued a temporary ruling yesterday that allows the state of Idaho to ban these heinous procedures on our children. Idaho had banned puberty blockers, surgeries, and hormone therapies for minors last year. It's one of the first times that the Supreme Court has had an opportunity to rule on this issue. The ruling is not a decision on the legal question itself. Rather, it's more procedural, but it allows the Idaho law banning all of this to continue while it is challenged in court. The decision, predictably opposed by the Marxist Dem justices. Hopefully, the court's ruling is an indicator of just how the 6-3 conservative court will rule on the merits. Unfortunately, this disgusting experimentation on young Americans is disguised as medical treatment, and it's happening in states all across the country. It seems the Planned Parenthood is partially behind it, which is in it of itself striking. In the state of Missouri, a judge ruled that Planned Parenthood must turn over its patient records to the state, because Planned Parenthood isn't legitimately medical care. Its users aren't protected by HIPAA. This means the state and its Attorney General, Andrew Bailey, can finally determine whether Planned Parenthood is conducting these procedures. Their discovery wide open to all of the Planned Parenthood documents and discovery. Not surprisingly, Planned Parenthood is stonewalling the turnover of the documents, and they are, in doing so, violating a court mandated order. So, will the state of Missouri get the documents to uncover these crimes against children? Joining us now is Attorney General of Missouri, Andrew Bailey. And Mr. Attorney General, congratulations on your pursuit of what is right once again. Let me turn to you on all of the host of issues that you have in your portfolio right now, and that you are prosecuting or proceeding. It's amazing the number of issues. I want to turn first, if we may, to a judge's ruling that you could access Planned Parenthood's records in your case to try to bring some rationale, reason, and compassion to the issue of transgender affirmation surgeries. Some call it mutilation. Your thoughts?
Yeah, this is a huge win for the health and safety of protecting children here in the state of Missouri. I want Missouri to be the safest state in the nation for children. You know, back in January, February of 2023, a whistleblower came forward and swore out an affidavit to my office, making very specific and credible allegations about a pediatric transgender clinic operating in St. Louis. While we investigated the matter, we called on a moratorium at the clinic, and the clinic refused, arguing that they were the only clinic that provided those types of services in the state of Missouri. Subsequent investigation revealed that was not truthful. There was a shadowy and clandestine network of these clinics operating to include Planned Parenthood clinics across the state of Missouri. We launched a first of its kind in the nation multi-agency investigation and have been stonewalled by Planned Parenthood throughout the process. The authority of the Attorney General's office to ensure that the people of the state of Missouri are protected from sham, providers of pseudo-science healthcare is explicit in statute. And so we continue to pursue the matter, and we'll get to the bottom of it. If there are wrongdoers who are harming children or doing so under false pretenses, gaining parental consent without providing the facts to the parents, we're going to hold those wrongdoers accountable. And that's why pushing this investigation forward is so critical. Very pleased that the court ruled in our favor and has told Planned Parenthood that they must turn over the documents we've subpoenaed.
It's encouraging, I have to say, first of all, that you are taking this so seriously when other attorneys general have avoided the issue. The American Medical Association is avoiding the issue. The Congress, the Senate itself, they have decided not to hold hearings on this critically important issue for the entire country. It's strange that groups of people who say they follow the science, that they want to do the right thing, they want to be compassionate, don't want to know the facts surrounding transgender identification, affirmation, or mutilation, depending on your perspective. I just really want to compliment you for doing what you're doing, because you are forcing the American Medical Association, primarily, in my opinion, to come to terms with what they're doing, with their surgeries, with the psychiatric care that they have been given, that they've been giving to transgenders. It's an ugly moment in our history, because others are just avoiding the subject, even though including minors are being, at the very least, scarred for life.
Yeah, no, Lou, you're absolutely right. Look, we've got to shine the light of truth on this, and history's not going to look kindly on the people who chose to bury their head in the sand like an ostrich. At the end of the day, this reminds me a lot of lobotomies in the 1930s and 40s. You know, at the time, that was leading science, that you would have somebody with a mental health disorder, and so the medical practice was to cut out a portion of their brain. That looks a lot like what we see today, when these innocent children who come in with a mental health condition or confused about their gender are raced towards puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones, dangerous, powerful, life-altering drugs, or ultimately irreversible gender transition surgeries, when there's zero FDA approvals or science to back up that these medications or surgeries are safe or effective in treating gender dysphoria. Here's what's frightening to me. Europe woke up to this a long time ago, and Europe is far to the left of America culturally, and yet countries like Scandinavian countries, England, France, recognized that they were harming a generation of children and abandoned these dangerous practices. We've got to wake up in the United States of America and do the same thing. It is unlawful for me to place my 2-year-old son in the front seat of my car and drive without a safety seat. And so the law recognizes that children need protection, and the adults in the room need to do a better job. Certainly proud of the work we've done here in the state of Missouri to shut these clinics down, drive them out of our state, and protect a generation of children.
And we've seen state after state, Montana, for example, recently, taking on draconian measures against a family dealing with these issues, yet didn't have anything near what should have been, in the minds of some at least, proper care, psychiatric care, as well as physical, medicinal care on the part of physicians. When I think about this, it just infuriates me that people don't want to know the truth. And I'm not going to say which side I'm talking about because I want to leave it open. Both sides, in point of fact, have been derelict in insisting on science and insisting on human compassion here, and also taking responsibility. When it's the state, in my opinion, it should certainly take responsibility for the psychiatric care, because we're learning very slowly, too slowly, that there are mental illnesses that are predicate to some of the confusion over gender identity. We now know that there are those confusions, according to most studies that I've heard about, are saying that the teenagers grow out of it, or young preteens grow out of their confusion. And to think that we're just blasting through, where we're letting teachers have major roles in life altering decisions, sometimes without the knowledge of the parents. We are so screwed up on this issue in this country that it's shocking.
You're absolutely right. The evidence that we have from at least one of the clinics is that 75% of the children who came to the clinic with gender dysphoria, this is the diagnosable mental health condition where they're confused about their gender, claim that they learned about their gender on TikTok. But what's going on at these clinics, to your point, is that rather than referring them for mental health assessments or psychology or psychiatry, more traditional forms of mental health treatment, they're prescribed life-altering drugs. So why are we treating this mental health condition differently than others, especially when there's no medicine or science to back it up? And the studies coming out of Europe point in the opposite direction. So I agree. We've got a lot more work to do here nationally to raise awareness on this issue and protect that next generation of youth. And again, I think history is not going to look kindly on those who buried their head in the sand or took the wrong side on this issue.
Well, Mr. Attorney General, Andrew Bailey, I want you to know the country owes you a debt, because you are making it clear that nothing less than the facts and the truth will do in the state of Missouri. And hopefully that will catch up with the rest of the country, or the rest of the country will catch up with that reality. We appreciate it, as always. Attorney General Andrew Bailey of Missouri. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Here's another instance of insane trans mania. A 35-year-old Wisconsin man who says he's a woman is now identifying as a vampire. His name is Adam Hetke. In other words, Hetke is something he's mentally ill. And now, because this man wasn't treated or wasn't viewed as the mentally disturbed person that he obviously is, Hetke has sexually assaulted a developmentally disabled girl. Hetke used a knife and threatened to bite her if he didn't get what he wanted. Hetke's attack comes after he was already under investigation for strangling a man to death. Hetke claimed the man was possessed by a demon. And meanwhile, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says Chinese overproduction is killing American jobs. Yellen says overproduction of solar panels, electric vehicles, batteries, other goods are threatening American companies, while China continues to benefit. This comes as U.S. officials have been working with China on industrial practices, trying to be, civil about it all. And retail company LL Bean says it's laying off some employees as shopping trends continue to change. The company didn't announce how many workers are affected, but it is cutting down hours to its call centers. And before we go, all of you out there know Mike Lindell and MyPillow no longer have those big box stores or shopping channels where they once did. They've been part of the cancel culture, and they want to pass the savings directly on to you if they introduce an extravaganza. They're having a $25 extravaganza. When Mike started MyPillow, it was a, one problem, one solution product company. Well, since then, with the help of his employees, his great dedicated employees, they now have hundreds of products some of you may not even know about. To get the word out, they're having this extravaganza, 2-pack multi-use MyPillows, just $25. And then MyPillow sandals, $25. Their 6-pack towels, that's $25 for that set. And brand new 4-pack dish towels, you guessed it, just $25. For the first time ever, the premium MyPillows with all new Giza fabric, any size, any loft level, even king size, only $25. The amazing offer won't last long, so order now. Go to mypillow.com or call 800-977-9152 and use promo code Dobbs. That's promo code Dobbs. Coming up, a record number of Chinese illegal aliens are now pouring across the southern border. Congressman Paul Gosar of Arizona joins us on that here next. Stay with us. Welcome back. The Republican-controlled House gave the Senate its articles of impeachment against Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. Yes, finally, the Senate has the impeachment. Biden's immigration czar is charged with high crimes and misdemeanors for enabling the invasion of our country, for inviting millions of illegal aliens into the country, and for lying about it all under oath to Congress. And that's just the least of it. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has indicated that Democrats will unite to crush the issue with a unified vote. Democrats, Marxist Dems, they protect their own, and they know Mayorkas is their own. Listen to Mayorkas respond after Congressman Dan Bishop put him on the spot today.
Congressman, individuals who are not citizens of the United States cannot vote in federal elections.
But that's not what I asked. I asked what actions DHS is taking to ensure that that doesn't occur.
Well, two things. Number one, I believe that it is state and local election officials that monitor the eligibility of individuals. We do not oversee the election enrollment process. What we do is enforce our borders and, in fact...
So said shorter, nothing.
You just gotta wonder, what kind of fool thinks that he is kidding anybody? Or does he know that he's not kidding anybody? Does he understand that they're just going to sit there and nod their heads as this fool who has stripped open a 2,000-mile long border and turned it over to the Mexican drug cartels? Does he just think they'll sit there and take it? Well, the articles of impeachment shows him exactly what they think of him. By the way, at that wide open border, and occasionally the Mexican drug cartels let us actually act like we're in control of a few ports of entry, but that's all there is to it. At that border, the number of Chinese illegal aliens arrested has gone up a bit since 2021 with the inauguration of Joe Biden. The number of Chinese nationals arrested after getting across that border has surged. I think it's, and I just can't wait to tell you, 7,000% since 2021. I mean, that is mind-boggling by any standard. Between October and now, Customs and Border Protection has apprehended nearly 25,000 Chinese nationals alone. And the That's more than enough to fill an Army division. They're being released into the U.S. by the busload and private aircraft load. These people are coming from a country known for espionage and which is currently waging a Cold War against America and threatening a hot war by 2027. From Chinese communist spies to Hamas enthusiasts and sympathizers, our ruling class has decided to open the gates to one national security threat after another and permit them to cross that border without vetting, without knowing who they are, what their purpose is. And the majority are military age males. So you have a ready-made problem if anybody ever decides to find out just who has come across that border amongst the millions since Joe Biden took office. We turn now to California, the People's Republic of California, where the people of Huntington Beach, well, they're something of an isolated community because they voted to let the city mandate voters provide identification to cast ballots. Voter ID, think of it. Most normal people would consider that sound, sane policy and be a little shocked that it was coming from California. But California itself, the state, is run by, well, intemperate, insane officials like Attorney General Rob Bonta, who is now suing the city of Huntington Beach over their care and concern about electoral integrity. The Attorney General said in a statement, "The right to freely cast your vote is the foundation of our democracy, and Huntington Beach's voter ID policy flies in the face of this principle," said the moronic Attorney General of the state of California. That isn't even logical. It isn't true. And there you have it. This is an Attorney General trying to create law with his Marxist mad interpretation. The people of Huntington Beach exercise democracy and they freely cast their votes in favor of election integrity. They honored the principle that Bonta only would pretend to uphold with his specious nonsense. Indeed, Bonta is trying to overturn their will as voters. It's a reminder that democracy in the mouths of Marxist Dems is a meaningless word and just a guttural sound, if you will. Democrats aren't big on democracy at all. We know that. They love authoritarianism. They would all like to have a totalitarian America. That's why the puppet president, Joe Biden, bypassed Congress to enact a de facto amnesty, are you ready, for illegal aliens through the Temporary Protected Status Program. Now, is it amnesty if it's temporary? Here's a legal issue for you. That program, by the way, allows illegal aliens to avoid deportation by applying for permission to live and work for a limited time in the United States. But they don't leave, so it does amount to a backdoor amnesty. And by the way, it hasn't got a thing in the world to do with amnesty. It's just what Joe Biden decided. Well, let's be honest, his attorneys and his activist cadre of Marxist Dem officials in the White House decided would be the most effective way to extend the program to cover more than 1 million illegal aliens. And it's going to get much, much larger, I assure you, folks. Joining us now to talk about the Mexican cartel's border crisis is Arizona Congressman Paul Gosar. And Congressman, great to have you with us. It's been too long since you and I have talked. Great to see you. The border.
Great seeing you, Lou.
Let's talk border. We've been talking border for what, 30 years? I mean, we're looking at the straight up handoff to the Mexican drug cartels from Joe Biden to the Mexican drug cartels. They didn't even bother with Lopez Obrador, the president. They gave him that border directly to the cartels. Your reaction?
You're absolutely right. This is operational control here is on the border is with the cartels. And, this is all related. This is following the dollars because it's costing us over $500 billion a year to take care of these individuals. And it's going to get more expensive. And you may ask, where are they getting all this money? And they're getting this money from these COVID National Emergency Acts. And, they flaunt it in front of us. They show the governors of the blue states, hey, take this money, it's COVID money, take this money, take COVID money. And that's a big problem because now we have these NGOs allowing these people to come in. They have operation control from the cartels getting their drugs across, their human smuggling. And Luke, can you imagine that the United States is now the largest purveyor of human trafficking in the world? That's not a moniker we want to have.
Yeah, that isn't. But we've got it because Joe Biden
Yep.
loves it. And Joe Biden is probably getting a 10% cut somewhere in that, whether it's the awful sex trafficking, 80,000 children missing. We don't even have a hint as to where they are. We're talking about kids from this side of the border. We don't know anything about the kids that are being brought in here by the thousands, but they're being sex trafficked as well, as are many of the women who the cartels are bringing across that border. But you know what really astounds me? First of all, that this country has tolerated this ignorant fool in the White House. This is a man who has no principle. He has no capacity. He's compromised. He is a puppet right down the line. But the truth of the matter is, I'm also surprised that not one of those border governors has joined Greg Abbott in trying to police that border that the drug cartels now own. They haven't even begun, whether it is the governor of California or Arizona or New Mexico. It's outrageous, don't you think?
I do, Lou, but we have consequences for actions in our elections. That's why we have to make these big changes over the time. But there's more to the story too. For every 10 million illegals that come into this country, that's 17 congressional seats. That's how California has manipulated these congressional seats. You have more congressional seats, you have more power.
Paul Gosar, thanks for being with us. We appreciate it. Great to see you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Lou. Always a pleasure.
And please join us for my podcast, The Great America Show, available at loudobbs.com or wherever you get your podcast. We thank you for being with us, and please join us here tomorrow, 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 Central. The Lindell Report is coming up next, and you certainly do not want to miss it. Good night, and God bless you.
Meet Jim and Mary, a seasoned couple who have weathered the storms of life and have witnessed the evolution of our great nation. Today, they embark on a journey that's as important as any they faced before, exercising their right to vote. They belong to a generation that built this country, fought for its values of faith, family, and freedom, and now they worry if their votes will truly count. But fear not, Jim and Mary are members of AMAC. As AMAC members,